Well, good morning, and thanks for coming to the April legislative coffee. This will be our last legislative coffee of this session, and if you haven't been to a legislative coffee before, the way that we do this is we give the microphone to our representatives. They all give us a quick update as to what they've been working on and what they see here as they start to wrap up for the year. And then at that point, we'll open it to questions. We do have a microphone for when you ask your question, and we just ask that we don't get in a back and forth debate. Just, let's have questions and answers, and we'll keep things moving, and we'll go till about 11 o'clock. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Steve, and we'll get things started.
Good morning. I hope everybody's doing well. I walked in at the last minute, and I'm going to blame Baumgar 17% off sale for that. My wife gave me a list last night of all that I have to get at Baumgar's this morning, and I had to go first thing because it was going to run, they would have run out of stuff. So I pushed it to the last minute to get here, but I did make it on time. So they got that's a great sale going on. So we just finished week 14. We just got a couple weeks to go if we finish on time at our 110th day. I think that's May something. Is it 2nd or something like that? Would be our day that we don't get paid anymore per diem or anything like that. Our hotel rooms and food and everything becomes our own expense. So I just want to talk about a few things that we passed and that we're working on in the House this past week. I think I would call it economic relief for Iowans week. We passed a lot of things out of Ways and Means. Now, all of these things are not going to get all the way through, but I will just share a number of these things with you. We've been working, we've lowered the top tax rate to 3.8%. We've done a lot of things to try to ease the tax burden on Iowans, but with inflation and everything that's been going on, I just want to talk about a few of these bills. We passed our Ways and Means, and I am on Ways and Means, and I did vote for all of these pieces of legislation. But again, they have to run through the mill. We have to get fiscal notes on them, determine if they can fit into the budget, because we're not going to get in a position where we would ever have a deficit or anything of that kind. So House File 110 would eliminate the tax on overtime pay. House File 268 eliminates the income tax on tips. It mirrors what President Trump is doing at the federal level. It would apply up to $25,000 worth of tips. With an annual income under $155,000, the tax on those tips would be eliminated. House File 963 would eliminate the sales tax on laundry detergent. Again, some of these things I'm talking about here are sort of essentials that they're small things, but they help a little. House File 964 would eliminate the sales tax on toilet paper. The joke was we're wiping away taxes, so we on certain things, toilet paper is one of them. House File 966 would eliminate the sales tax on dietary supplements. So again, these are things that aren't already exempt from sales tax that are kind of essentials for folks. We already exempt sales tax on food, and so we thought this would be some minor reliefs that we could provide for taxpayers. The other thing I think that is important that we pass is House File 965, which increases the adoption tax credit from $5,000 to $20,000. It's very expensive to adopt a child, and it shouldn't be. We've been steadily increasing that adoption tax credit. We started out at $2,000, we moved to $5,000, or maybe we started at $2,500. Anyway, we've been incrementally increasing that adoption tax credit. We now moved to $20,000 because it's just really expensive to adopt a child, and we don't want any situation where a child that lives a loving home that could be prevented because of the cost of it. So those are some of the things that we can do to help that. We also passed House File 165 that was sent to the governor that requires the same test as a condition of graduation for our high school students as folks take it when they become American citizens, a citizenship test. They only have to get 60% on the test, and they have years to take it. There's no fee. They can take it over and over and over and over and over again, starting I think in the 9th grade. So there's no way it's going to be an impediment, but we think it would be a good opportunity for our young people to know as much as possible about our country. I think that's important because, again, as history. It was always just one generation away from extinction. So we want to make sure that our young people understand the lessons of liberty and the way our country works. House File 1012 is the governor's disaster relief bill. We've had horrific flooding in Spencer. We've had tornadoes here in this area. So this disaster relief bill just gives government a little more flexibility when there is a disaster to be able to respond to the needs of the people. There's a lot of details in that bill I won't go over right now, but it really, I think helps give the government some more flexibility to respond when people need the help most. I'm not going to say a lot about the next few things. I think Senator Schultz is going to talk a lot about maybe PBMs.
If you give the background,
okay.
I'd love to get it.
So I don't know if you know what pharmacy benefit managers are, but PBMs were started years and years ago. They were supposed to help pharmacies with paperwork and things of that kind, and they were, I think, beneficial at the time. They've become what amounts to a Ponzi scheme, and one of the big reasons that pharmaceuticals cost so much today, they're putting our local pharmacies out of business. We've been trying to deal with this for quite a few years on the state level. We've passed several bills. They really need to deal with it on the federal level, and incredibly, as we've begun discussing this bill, President Trump just issued an executive order that it looks like it's going to go after these PBMs. It's horrible. They're the reason our prescription drug prices are so high, and the reason we're losing so many local pharmacies. We've got a very strong bill that I hope we can get across the finish line. We're working with the Senate on. I'll give that background and then let other folks talk more about it. The final thing I will mention is eminent domain, because I know that's on the mind of a lot of folks. So I know that Senator Schultz will give more detail. I know from talking to Senator Harlan and Senator Salmon this week that they have a plan in the Senate to try and amend the bill back to the original House version. I hope they're able to do that. We can certainly entertain in the House, and I'm pushing our leadership if that isn't accomplished in the Senate to put our eminent domain bills on a budget bill and send it to the Senate and force them to strip it out. I think this is an important issue, and we're not giving up on it. I would also say now that our great governor has announced that she's not running again. One of the things I'll be looking for as a Republican and as a citizen of the state of Iowa is where these candidates stand on property rights. There will be no obfuscation of property rights as far as I'm concerned. Candidates for governor for the Republican nomination are going to have to come out hard on where they stand on property rights. It's part of, and not just some vague statement. They need to say where they stand on the CO2 pipeline and the use of eminent domain for that project, not just some vague obfuscation statement. There are three candidates right now that have come out very strongly on property rights: Brad Sherman, Pat Grassley, and these people aren't candidates yet. Brad Sherman has announced. Nobody else has, and I'm aware of. But the Speaker of the House, Pat Grassley, Bobby Cochran, the Chair of Ways and Means, have been fighting years for property rights. There's no doubt where they stand on this issue, and that's what I expect to hear from every candidate for governor, and I think that's what we all should expect. So with that, I'll turn it over to President Williams.
All right, good morning, everyone. Happy Easter, by the way. Today's Saturday before Easter Sunday, and it's good to see so many people come out for this today. Sometimes people are asking me, what am I doing up here? Just so I explain here how when we redistricted the state, Shelby County got cut into an L shape and an L shape like this, and so the top and the western side is Steve's area, the bottom and the eastern side is my area as your state representative. So that's why I'm here. Anyway, so Steve's touched on a number of things. I came in rather unprepared, stole a piece of paper from Steve and a pencil from a gentleman in the front, and then I wrote so many things on here I can't get through them all. So we'll talk a little bit about PBMs, and I know that Senator Schultz has a lot more information on that. One of the things I wanted to point out was on the fiscal notes. You mentioned fiscal notes, and what that is when we get a bill that's obviously going to be costing the state some money, the Fiscal Services Group puts together an estimate of what is this going to cost if we put this into place. And then we get that information ahead of time to give us a good idea of what we're really talking about other than just the words on the paper. What's the real money behind it? Their fiscal note shows that if we pass the PBM bill as it had been written, it was going to cost us, the state, somewhere between $5 and $15 million. And I'm looking at that and trying to think, how how in the world is that even possible? And I'm not sure if I know anybody who thinks that it's accurate. But there are some things that are definitely missing from there. For instance, we've lost, I think, 29 pharmacies in the state of Iowa and are set to lose probably at least that many yet again because of PBM. So what's the cost of that to the state to lose 29 local pharmacies? I don't know, but it's not included in that. So I think while it might cost some money on one side, the savings on the other side is not reflected in that, and I'm hoping that people can see through that. So they didn't do anything wrong or on purpose. It's just, you have to really think through what you're reading. So speaking of reading, I'm still tracking with reading all the bills before I vote on them. And I'll say I'm not sure if I'm proud of this one or not, but the other day I was reading bills. We get them the night before, and I'm reading 20 bills, and I got stuck on page 17 on one of them. And I'm like, I can't understand. This is 1%. What in the world are we doing with 1% of a tax sale certificate going to an entity? And so the next morning before we voted on it, I asked the question now to the bill drafters, what is this 1% supposed to mean? I don't get it. And they said, oh, typographical error. That's supposed to say 100%. So had we passed it the way that it was, it would have been wrong. Now, as it turns out, I'm not that proud of this because I'm the lone no vote on that bill because I read it and I liked what they were trying to do. I didn't like how the bill was trying to put it into place. And I don't want to get into too many details on it. That's just part of the day of the life, I guess, of a legislator. So, Representative Holt mentioned a couple of things on the education. We had the civics test when we ran the civics test in the House the other day. So this is the test that would require high school kids to be able to get 60% on the same test that we give immigrants when they want to become a U.S. citizen. They have to get 60% on that to pass to graduate, and they can take it as many times as they want. That was met with an awful lot of opposition, and I couldn't understand why are we so opposed to this. I went to school in Illinois, and Illinois then, and a long time ago, and still requires students to pass a Constitution test, an Illinois Constitution test, a flag test in order to graduate. One of the amendments that the Democrats offered on this particular bill the other day was that all the legislators would have to take that same test, and whatever our scores were, we'd get posted on there. Now, that's political theater. I have no problem with that. I actually took the test a couple days before. Now, keep in mind, this is a multiple choice. The 100 questions are multiple choice. I took the test without the aid of multiple choice and without studying. I got 96% on it. I don't doubt most of you in this room can pass this test. It's just not that hard. But it does make you think. How many stars are around a flag? Why are they there? How many stripes are around a flag? Why are they there? Who's the commander-in-chief? Things of that nature. What are your rights as a citizen are on that test? So I'm in favor of it. I think it's a good bill. We also passed a few cannabis bills, medical cannabis bills. I struggle a little bit with those. I don't want that to be that sneaking in of some other things. And if you've been to Denver lately, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But those passed and are on their way to the Senate, I think. I don't think that they already went through the Senate. Talked about pipelines, adoption. So I've got an adoption bill that I'm hoping to be able to run next week that would not allow the state to use somebody's religious beliefs on sexual orientation or sexual identity as the sole reason not to allow them to foster a child or to adopt a child. And so that's a bill that Representative Holt signed to me, and I'm thankful for him doing that because it opened my eyes to a few things. My first question was, does this really happen in Iowa? And I'm told no. So we're running the bill, and then I started getting all these emails from experts telling me that this would be terrible if we pass such a bill. Like, if we're not doing it, what's the harm of this bill? And then I'm hearing about all the harm if we do pass this. It's strange. So I'm hopeful to be able to run that one next week. I think with that, I'll let our Senator Schultz take over, and apologize for taking so long.
Well, hello everybody, and I put first on my list, and you stole a little thunder. He is risen. He is risen indeed. Hallelujah. It is Easter weekend. Last night was Good Friday service, and tomorrow morning we wake up with our hope fulfilled, that death has been defeated, and Christ is to keep it close to the last bill that you talked about, I was actually doing some reading on that bill. Completely support it, hope it should be unanimous. But I found out in reading that Colorado is actually trying to do just the opposite and define that if an adoptive or foster parent will not fully support the ideology of boys playing girls and girls playing boys, that they would be defined as, I forget the legal term, but it's hostile. So we do definitely have a divide happening between the states. Just overall, I think I speak for all three of us. I want to make Iowa the leader of the three states, those who follow the traditional Christian constitutional values that lead to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, and not an ideological tyranny. So, getting into, I don't think I heard anything about birth center certificate of need. Did either of you? Did I miss that? We passed a bill here that would just remove the certificate of need for birth centers. There are 0 certificate of need birth centers in Iowa right now. We think that that's a regulation that's in the way. Our rural hospitals are to the point where Denison doesn't deliver babies, Grove doesn't deliver babies. I'm not sure about number 2 here. Are they still? Carroll does in the district. Ottoman does not. We are running out of places for mothers to deliver babies, and we're trying to make it easier. Now, along with this, and it does not, we legalized, removed the prohibition on midwives earlier, allowing more naturalistic, homeopathic, or whatever the right phrase is, just allow people that will have babies. This will allow those folks to just open their own centers and not have to go to the person's house, or it just offers alternatives. It's not a competition against who we have, because I'm afraid, given the liability, the regulations, and the cost, our hospitals in rural Iowa are backing out of the business. So, both of my daughters were born in Ivy Grove. Then Ivy Grove partnered with Denison. Denison got out to, now they're going to Carroll. I mean, so I'm 2 degrees away from the hospital and delivered my babies at this point. So, we also passed a constitutional amendment that would require a 2/3 vote of the legislature to raise your taxes. This is because we have worked so hard for 8 years to set us up as a leader in financial freedom and to actually allow the economy to explode. All of that is working, the formula's happening. So we're offering to Iowa, it's a second reading. I don't know if the House will do it this year or next, but you've been in support of it. The human element that I'd like to offer is the gentleman who ran the resolution in the Senate is Senator Rocky DeWitt. He's dying of cancer, and I know our Ways and Means, Dan Dawson, the chair of Ways and Means, has talked to the House Ways and Means chair, Bob Eden, about the potential of you passing this so that the DeWitt family, maybe Rocky, could actually receive the constitutional paperwork. It wouldn't be voted on by the people, but we think that would be a fine, he's not going to finish out his term, it looks like. So we'd like him and his family to have the final accomplishment in his career. But it's also more important, it's big for the people of Iowa. And we want to make sure that if your taxes are raised, either income or a new income style tax, it is due to a crisis where it's required, to the point where 2/3 will go in. PBM update, then the House has been the leader ever since Craig's predecessor, Brian Best. You folks have been the leader. The Senate's getting on board. We were really close. We think we had the votes, and we think there's something less than straight up and above board happened in the Senate between the lobby and decision makers. That essentially stalling tactic. It wasn't dishonest and a lie, but it was like, well, we just need one more meeting with you before you run it. Promise you won't run it today. Well, we had the votes right there, and then all of a sudden we find out, well, we gotta wait until we can't run it today. It's BS. We've been doing this 4 or 5 years. In the meantime, that led to a discussion. It led to a compromise that deals with dispensing fees, because that was the hang-up in the Senate. The bill requires a $10.68 dispensing fee so that pharmacies, even if they are leveraged into selling below cost of purchase by PBMs, and that that they at least get paid to dispense it, you know, to have the license, to have the pharmacy, and to count out the bills. The compromise will break down the dispensing fees, allowing it for rural areas, not so much for urban areas, and then not hardly at all for large chains, the monsters, the Walmarts, the CVS's, all that. The argument in opposition was that I don't want to go to CVS, watch 20 people be in line, or Walmart, and watch them get 1068, 1068, 1068 when they're already doing fine and they don't need help. So I guess some of this is an update for you folks. The rest of the bill contains all of the transparency and sunshine that PBMs have been resisting over the years. So I don't think we're changing anything or putting it on his head. We found a compromise that will focus on the bottom line. And I'm hoping that this week you'll get more details and we'll get it through. On the summit, the landowners, the House did a fine job, got the bill over. Our Commerce Chair put his bill that did not do what the House language did. We needed a vehicle that we were hoping we could, just the blunt language was hijack, turn it back to your bill, and then force a vote on it. Right now, I don't think that bill's going to come up. I think 51% will not come up because I don't think they want to see that division, because we wouldn't have enough votes to go either way. The Senate has been divided for 4 years. I've been on the landowner side, and so that's just my honest, transparent update. I don't believe you need to worry about the Commerce bill becoming law. We don't have the votes for that, but we also don't have the votes to flip it over, turn it back to the House bill. But I'll be interested during the budget process, as Steve said, because there is a large enough segment of the Senate that it's going to get sticky in the end. I'd like to, as far as Iowa Utilities Commission, which is right part and parcel with the summit and the pipeline and the landowners, Eric Harlan is up for renewal as chair of the Iowa Utilities Commission. He has nowhere near enough votes. I don't believe we will even bring him to the floor because there's nowhere near enough votes. Here's what I'm interested in discussion during your portion. Josh Burns is up to be renewed on the board. Right now, we don't have enough votes to confirm him. I see Josh's actions as the only sunshine and fresh air that the landowners have received. He's listened to you, and the landowners say they'd like to have him back there. I also, if I can get the votes, and a few of us are working on this, to get Josh reconfirmed, but then to make him chair. Because we're suddenly going to be in need of a chair. What do you see? Because Eric's not going to be it. I also, the third member of the IUC, Commissioner Martz, is not up for reconfirmation. She was just put there 2 years ago. But my understanding is she actually was the other vote to support Josh Burns. I don't know if that's true or not, but we can talk about that a little bit later. Please bring it up. We have 2 years to find that out and to see what happens. And I suppose if Josh is successful in being reconfirmed, his testimony is probably going to be pivotal in that decision in 2 years. So that's where we stand on the IUC. We also, as we approach my last issue, as we approach the end of session, there's going to be a salary bill for statewide and legislative elected officials. We are far overdue. We're way behind the curve, so so here's where I'm just confessing to you. I was the guy who filed the bill based on the treasurer's recommendations to update the statewide and legislative pay. He used a simple formula that said if there was a cost of living updated similar to state employees, this is where they would be. I chose to use those numbers. They're higher than I'm comfortable with, but it's simply because it's easier to amend down and just get down to where you folks say you're comfortable, we think we're comfortable, and you can't vote up in an amendment. That's just human nature. The bill starts with the governor going from 130 to 230, and that's just cost of living part. And there's also a concern that most of our statewide officials don't make as much as the top 2 people in their office already, their deputy and their career staff So governor to 130, all the other statewide, auditor, treasurer, secretary of state, attorney general, all those would be at 180 from 103, I think it is, or is it 113? Legislators would go from 25 to 45. Now, the amendment that I've proposed, I have been talking to Skylar Wheeler, I've been talking to, who's the other district? Henry Stone. I have been floating because we're trying to get this agreement here done so there's not a lot of time wasting. The governor back to 180, the statewide down to 150, and the legislator knocked down to 40. Right now it sounds like, no, we need to be closer to 45. I'm worried that we're right at that level where we're approaching the states who have more full-time legislators. I'm interested in your input. There's also a cost of living allowance in the original bill that would start a consumer price index and a cost of living allowance on those numbers. I'm concerned if we start too high, that the cost of living will throw us right up to where it's almost not, it'd be embarrassing, especially at the governor's numbers. Even at 180, we start doing 2-3% every year, it compounds and it'll get out of control. So I'm offering that the cost of living allowance has a 10-year sunset so that the legislature can either let them sit and wait for the world to catch up or decide to do something. That's just all in full transparency. With that, I'm done waiting to hear your questions.
I've been working on this salary issue for a few years. I just want to add one more thing to the great remarks that Michelle's made. The legislators, statewide officials haven't had a pay raise since 2005, is it? And as a result of that, the $25,000 in 2005, if it was, accounting for inflation, would be something like 47 or 85 or something today. The problem we have, and this is what I'll say to people, nobody wants to vote themselves a pay raise. It's horrible. But the problem we have is, all you're going to have representing you if we don't do something is rich people, retired people, and business owners. We have already lost a fantastic young legislator last year by the name of Phil Thompson, whose wife was pregnant, and he said, guys, I can't do it. I have to provide for my family. We can talk about this being part-time all day long, but the problem is, it's kind of part-time. We're in session for 110 days, but we have to go to massive numbers of meetings. We have to do all kinds of things to do the job right when we're not in session. And it's very difficult to have any other job when you're a young person and you're in the legislature. The other thing I would point out is that politics are so vitriolic today that if you're in the legislature, you're a Republican, maybe if you're a Democrat, I don't know if they can deal with the same thing, but everybody wants to cancel you because of positions they disagree with you on in the legislature. We've got a young legislator right now, a young family, just had a baby. He was selected to be chair or be in charge of like a chamber of commerce sort of thing, and there's a whole group of liberal folks that are trying to prevent him from getting the job. And he talked to me about it, frustrated, and he said, what am I supposed to do? I mean, if I'm radioactive because I've been in the legislature, how am I supposed to provide for my family? So the reality is, if we don't do something, you're not going to have young people in the legislature. You're just going to have rich people, retired people, and business owners. I don't think that's what Iowa needs to be represented by, so we have to do something. And it's never pleasant to vote a pay raise. And if we do, of course, it will take effect after the next election, so that people that are currently in office and elected office would have to be reelected. That's the way it's normally done. But it is a very, very serious issue, and I'd love to hear your feedback, because nobody, again, wants to give a pay raise, but $25,000 a year, folks, we're not going to be able to continue to have good young people running. It's just that simple. So with that, thank you. Here we go.
I'm not sure we've done that before. We didn't mean to filibuster,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
we're already at 10:30.
Yeah.
I hope we covered enough issues that we covered a few questions.
All right, so questions, start with Mike. Then we got one in the back after that, Court.
Well, after hearing what you get paid, I almost hate to ask this, but Senate File 592, the accessory dwelling units. The accessory dwelling units, Does that work now? I'll just talk loud. House File 592 and the accessory dwelling units, I think it's already passed and is headed to the governor's desk, will allow for an accessory dwelling on a single-family residential lot in any town or city. The city can't say no to it. That's one of those more erosions of home rule that I worry about. We moved into an R1 neighborhood thinking that, there's no apartments or other rentals in the area. If both of my neighbors decided to put rental units in their backyard, there wouldn't be anything the city could do about it or I could do about it. So A, did you support that bill? And B, talk about the erosion of home rule when it comes to cities.
I did through ways and means, and that now I believe that I say that with a question mark. I believe, but my understanding. So we were talking. I don't know if it's considered offensive in this world or not. Mother-in-law lofts, mother-in-law like extra. I'm not convinced that it is investment property. Do you think that would fall under that?
The last, what I read this morning on it, I tried to update this morning, and it could be for investment property.
That was not my understanding. I'm going to admit, when you started talking, all my ears perked up, just thinking that, well, that's not the way we discussed it or talked about it. If it is there, if it is there, I'm going to have to watch and see what happens in the state of Iowa. Do you know of anything, any controversy as far as the governor's office?
I don't know, it just says this passed by both the House and the Senate, and it's been sent to the governor's desk.
Okay.
It's not been signed yet.
I'm going to show that I did not think that it applied to investment. I'm not expecting a lot of investment or extra. I don't have a strong position to give you on that. Do you?
Yeah, back up here a little bit. So what he's talking about is, if you want a lot in town and you're living there and you want to build another housing unit on your own property behind your house, maybe for the mother-in-law, maybe for investment property, you'd be able to do that. The county and city can't stop you. And there's a lot of things that the county and city can't do, like they can't tell you it has to be a certain size or a certain color or match the other stuff in town, etc. So this bill came from the AARP. It was not in my committee, but I did read this very carefully and asked a lot of questions about it. Talked to my own city administrator about it to see what her opinion was on it. The property rights guy in me says, heck yes, I own that property. If I want to build a house on it, I should be able to do that, and it shouldn't stop me. But then the realist in me says, what kind of houses are people going to build in their backyard? What's that going to look like? What can they do with that? And once the house is built, even if you did build it for the mother-in-law, at some point in time, that the house may become vacant. Now what are you going to do with it? You're not going to tear it down. So part of the reason for this was that we're about, I think, 24,000 housing units short in the state of Iowa at this point in time. And there's only so many places more to build. If you wanted to go build a house today in town, a lot is going to cost you maybe $25,000 plus building permits and everything else. So I'm very concerned about this bill. I did vote for it, but I did some diligence on it with my local people about it. Even 2 months ago when this first came up, I was asking, what does this really mean to the city? What does this really mean to you? And they weren't thrilled with it. Now the final version of this bill had no opposition to it from the Association of States and Counties. Again, my city administrator said, well, yeah, a lot of people have looked at this and have made modifications to where they're as comfortable as they can be. But yeah, what if people put a mobile home in the backyard and there's nothing about what age it could be? It does have to be on a solid foundation and a permanent structure. You can do that. Yeah, there's a size limitation. It can't be more than 1,000 square feet or 50% of the main residence. So if your main residence is 3,000 square feet, you can build a 1,500 square foot building behind you. So yeah, it's
And then can you talk about the home rule erosion as I see it anyway. You know, the state doesn't like the federal government telling them what to do, and cities don't like the state telling them what to do. And that seems to be more the norm these days.
I appreciate your perspective on home rule is going to be different than mine, because I think the ultimate home rule is the homeowner that owns that property. I'm sorry, but that's the ultimate home rule for me. And this made sense to me. If we talk about the mother-in-law quarters and making it easier for families to do that for folks that, you know, their mothers or their fathers or whatever that might need that. The housing shortage was touched upon, and there wasn't a lot of discussion on the issue that you just brought up. I will say this too, to Representative Williams' point that there was no opposition at the end from the counties and the cities. That's what they're there for. If you guys have objections to something, then they need to be telling us. Sometimes I think these guys aren't doing their jobs, to be honest with you. We pass something and the next year we hear, oh, there's this, and well, why didn't your lobbyists come to us and tell us something? So maybe you need to be talking to them, because we didn't hear anything from them that there was a problem. So maybe they need to start doing their job a little bit better and talking to you guys, because I heard no opposition to this in the cities and the counties.
Could be nobody else agreed with me either.
Yeah, we thought we were doing a good thing by allowing homeowners to be able to, you know, do this a little bit easier and maybe move their mother-in-laws in or their mothers or whatever that are forever and they want them to be close. And so that was kind of the discussion in our caucus about it.
Well, one last thing, it's not a complete free-for-all. There are still setbacks and building criteria and you can't violate code. If you live in an area with, what do they call it, a homeowners association, the homeowners association thing cannot be violated. So they have the home rule in that case, so.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask kind of a two-part question here, going back to a little bit to the salary increases. So totally appreciate not having salary increases from 2005 for the representatives and the senators. Curious though on the governor. I mean, 130 to 230 is a pretty significant jump, especially when you consider like our U.S. senators and House of Representatives are paid around 174. Speaker of the House Johnson is I think around 223, 225, and so it feels like we're stair-stepping pretty significantly. So the first part of my question is going to be in the spirit of DOGE, how are we funding those increases and what is that total increase across the government? And then my second part of that question is a little bit along fiscal responsibility as well. I think a lot of us have gotten property tax valuation increases. I've heard from multiple people in Shelby County about significant valuation increases, and I know we touted about property tax reduction. So I would love to hear a little bit more information about how I triangulate my significant valuation increases in the spirit of lowering my property taxes. Thank you, John.
On the first question, I've already explained the amendment and where I think all the numbers are going to go. I mean, so 230, 180, those are gone. They were just the initial, as I explained, those were the initial based on just a math formula, so that they started in a position we already had most of the amendment worked out. How we're going to pay for it is in the spirit of DOGE. I think Steve already mentioned that. The need to have some package that will attract people to run that represent all of Iowa, and we don't just end up with people right out of college or retired or independently wealthy people. At some point, if you're not compensated somewhat, because to me, I would echo what Steve had said. It's kind of part-time. By the time you handle the constant meetings, the email, the everything, it's closer to a full-time than a part-time. But this would just be a judgment difference. If you hate office holders, and I'm not alleging you do, if you hate office holders and don't want them to get anything, certainly I respect the fact that no, I don't want you to get any money and you ask for the job. I can live with that, somebody having that position. Being there, I think I can predict what you'll get if you are not compensated, and the people who can either get by because they have no family yet, right out of school, or have already built and finished their career. I don't know how to answer it any better than that. You either think you're going to get the people you pay for, or you're willing to take whoever's willing to do it for no money. I don't know how else to go down with it.
And Tammy, I would also mention this is what happens when you go from 2005 to 2025 without a pay raise. Anything we do is going to look like this massive increase. So if we do a smaller increase, Because like I said, if you look if you account for inflation in 2005, then the 25,000 should be 47 or 48 or something today for House members. I haven't looked at it with the governor, but it's probably similar numbers. They probably just took that number up to what it would have been when you account for inflation. But those numbers have already been lowered down, and those numbers are not going to be what was finalized, or what would be finalized if this even passes at all. The problem you're always going to have when you're trying to do something like this and you haven't had a pay raise in 20 years is that the numbers are going to look ridiculous. If we do it just a little bit, let's say we raise the legislator pay from 25 to 30 or something like that, you're really not addressing the problem as far as young people being able to afford it. You're just not. And if you just raise it that amount and then put a automatic cost of living increase, that what we've discussed is having a cost of living increase that's connected to state workers. So if state workers get an increase, elected officials would get the same percentage increase, so that this issue would never have to be sort of dealt with again, because it's always difficult to deal with. So, anytime legislators are talking about a pay raise, you get called names and look at this person that's getting laid off and this person that's getting laid off. It's very, very difficult. So those numbers certainly will not be the final ones that Senator Schultz mentioned. The other thing I would mention is that we have to try to figure out it's perplexing to me right now. The governor's chief of staff gets paid way more than she gets paid. The auditor chief of staff gets paid way more than the auditor gets paid. The treasurer, everybody. That's just how it is, because you can't, so just put that into perspective. You can't get people to be in those positions without paying them what they're being paid right now. But yet we're paying the chief executive of the state less than her chief of staff, or whoever the governor might be. So this is what we're trying to grapple with and trying to figure out. We appreciate the input.
I don't think my question was around the numbers per se, it's where we're funding it from. Like, is it going to be that we just talked about reducing the tax rate for Iowans? Are we going to increase taxes on Iowans to pay for it? Like, those are my question is, well, where is it coming from? Not the fact the numbers, like you guys know the numbers. It's how are we funding it?
It's just out of the general fund.
Yeah, it's a general fund expense. It does not come from property taxes.
Well, I know that,
Yeah.
I get that, but.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a general fund expense, and that's where all of our pay comes from, is the general fund, and I'll just say that, going into this, I know what the pay was. It wasn't a secret to me what it is, and I'm not independently wealthy, I'm not retired, I still have to keep my full-time job going, and I worked until 2:30 this morning, not trying to get any sympathy from anybody, but we put some hours into this. The biggest struggle is going to be, we're going to run out of people who are willing to serve for the kind of money that it pays. And if it becomes a rich man's game, we're all toast. So I'll support a pay raise. I certainly wouldn't support some of the highest numbers that were on the original thing, but I understand why that was there. So yeah.
There's one more thing out of the general fund, Tammy, and I'm not saying every dollar, every penny of taxpayer money matters, but this is the tiniest split when you're talking about a $9 billion budget. You know what I'm saying? So we've got to make those decisions, because people are going to think we're terrible when we go for a pay increase. So this is the struggle that we have to deal with. We get paid the big bucks.
So, can everybody hear me, or do you even care? To go to the pay raises real quick. Literally, that's a very hard decision to make, and it's very hard to discuss. We discussed it in Harrison County. Last month, there was not a person in the room that was not for a pay raise. I mean, you're right. You're going to get people that can afford to run for office, and that's all they do. And when we look at our legislators, you think, January through April. That's not all they work. They're there several times during the year working, and they start in November, December, start talking about bills and what they've got in front of them. So I am for pay raises for you, although I am looking at the governor's pay raise. Even at that, for 4 years, we've asked her for a meeting, and we're not getting anywhere with her. And we were there last week and the week before, and her chief of staff runs around circles. I mean, the door was quickly shut when we walked in. She was in the office because the little kids that were outside from STEM activities had her had pictures taken with her probably 1 minute before we walked in. So she's there, she just doesn't want to meet with us. Her legacy will be that she did not support property rights, and that's pretty sad. She can talk to her grandchildren about that, I guess. So pay raises, I don't have a problem with that. And you're not even going to get kids out of college because they've got student loans. They can't afford to be running for office with that. Real quick on Josh Burns. If it hadn't been for Josh Burns, we would have pipe in the ground. Josh is the one that, and granted he voted for the permit, but the only reason he voted for the permit was because he put in there those stipulations that no, there was not going to be any pipe in the ground until they had permits from South Dakota, North Dakota, wherever the case may be. So, yeah, we were disappointed he voted for it, but after finding out if he had dissented, he would not have been able to put any stipulations in there. Josh can be wishy-washy. That's what my sister says. I've seen that. But Josh is also well-educated, has been on that board/commission for a lot longer than the other two. Sarah Marston, she even said a word during the hearing, I don't remember what it was, and there were days she wasn't even there. There were many days that there were only 2 people there. Josh was usually the one that was always there. And one day there was only 1 person there, so that wasn't even a quorum. So I am in favor of Josh being renewed as far as the board, and if he's the chairman, I saw him as a chairman, acting as a chairman, right after Helen and March were confirmed by the Senate, because Helen didn't really know what to do, and Josh did a great job that day. They stopped meeting with the public in November of 23. They haven't had a public meeting since then. I think Josh will put that back in. I mean, we're not the only ones as far as the pipeline people that are being considered for something. Whether it's natural gas or it's electric lines, the high transmission lines, whatever, people should have a say at that. And that's not being done. And I know they don't even read the objections. You know, we're told that put all those objections in. Well, yeah, we probably had 10,000 or more objections in for the pipeline. And when my sister turned some objections in one day, literally in person, she said, how do they find time? They don't read them. They have staff people to read them. And then they summarize them. Well, is that staff person biased? I mean, what are they getting? Are they getting a good report or are they getting a biased report? So in the meantime, I'm definitely for Josh. So I've got one or couple more things. This is on the water for the pipeline. It's still 3.36 billion gallons of water per year for phase 1. Nobody's had time to work on phase 2. And now there's a company that wants to sell water, our water, to western states to the tune of 3.7 billion gallons of water a year. Now, why is Iowa thinking that we have all this water? Because we're in a drought. You look at the drought map from Thursday. Yeah, it may have changed a little bit, but we got 5/100ths of an inch tonight. That's all we got. So I'm not saying maybe it's a new economic development. No, it's not economic development. We're killing ourselves. We're going to sell ourselves short. We're going to be Arizona or Colorado in the meantime because Arizona was selling water to China, which is really stupid. So when you get right back down to the bills, which are in the Senate again, and hopefully they're not going to sit there, do you have any idea if Whitver is going to bring a bill to the floor for debate anytime soon?
If he's going to bring a bill, it will be Usulo's, the Commerce Chair's amended version.
It's like, he gutted that bill. I mean, Steve worked, I don't know, probably 100 hours on it, if not longer, with a great omnibus bill. They totally did away with 943 for some reason. So when you look at, if you ask the landowners which bill they preferred, they would all say 943. They would all say that. I mean, if you had to say you can have this bill or this bill, they would say, we want this bill. This is important. This is good stuff over here. But this one is the one that protects us from our land being given to to a private company for their private gain. And why in the heck am I paying tax dollars so Saudi Arabia and South Korea and China can get tax credits? That makes no sense because those are the investors.
Agreed. The reason it would be Municipal's bill is because
That's what he pulled for.
that's what he put, that's what came out of Congress. Jack can't just go back and say, no, I like the earlier version. So if we pull Municipal's bill forward, that is where Kevin Lons has a strike after amendment to restore the House file. I'm on the list of people, they know already that I'm following Kevin Lons, and if it comes up, I'm voting for Kevin Lons' amendment. Then secondly, if that amendment fails, which, like I said, I don't expect the bill to come up because of these votes. If Alon's amendment fails, then we actually have to, according to Senate rules, re-vote on Buslo's amendment on the floor. I'm not convinced they have enough votes or it would be close enough to redo it. I've told them I'm not voting for Buslo's. It came out of Congress because the minority of us that were willing, the minority of us who were with the landowners, if we took down that bill would be dead completely. We need a vehicle, and I had mentioned this to you in is we need a vehicle.
The foyer when we were hiding from everybody else.
What's that?
In the foyer when we were hiding from everybody else.
Oh, well, no, that was the foyer. You were very kind to protect me there, so I can move on about my day, but we had a nice conversation. I mean, when we actually took up Buslo's amendment, we didn't have the votes to stop the amendment, but we did have, but we needed a vehicle on the calendar that Kevin Lons could offer his amendment to, so that we could try to re-hijack it, and, or would you call it liberate? To liberate the House bill from how it had been hijacked. That's the game we're trying to play. Buslo knows that. So I don't expect the bill to come up, but if it does, that's what will happen. As I understand, the Lons is in there first, so we would have to take a vote on the Lons, which I will support, to go back to the House bill, and then we'll see where that goes.
Well, Senator Busolo, on the day of the subcommittee, walked in, there were 3 of them, and he had a 34-page bill. Steve's was 3 pages. He had all this extra stuff in here, which some of it was even land restoration, which is already addressed in 739B. And the new rules anyway. I'm trying to finish up, but my point is nobody had read that bill. The other 2 hadn't read it. There were questions asked. Busolo kind of pushed it through. Then we had the committee meeting, and the same thing happened. Nobody had read that bill. So I'm glad you read bills, but nobody had read the bill that Senator Busolo had put in front of them. So I understand we wanted something, but this is not it.
No, I agree.
Let me address a few things you said. First of all, I agree completely with you with Josh Burns. I think Josh is on the landowner side. If you go back and look at his history, when Bobby Cochran was fighting against the Rock Island Clean Line, Bobby has a huge history of fighting for landowners, and Josh Burns was right there with him voting accordingly. So I do think Josh Burns is absolutely on the side of landowners, and I think he absolutely voted the way you described, because so that he could get in there, that no ground can be broken on construction here until it's approved in every other state. I know that's true. I agree with you completely on the water. I'm saying it over and over again. Anybody that will listen, where are we getting water from? Have you done any studies? What are you looking at? The other thing I would just mention, with no criticism of Senator Schultz, because I know he's on our side, so I want to make that very clear. But from my experience in the House, don't think for a minute that leadership doesn't know what's going to come out of the committee. That's just simply not true. As Judiciary Chair, I do not operate in a vacuum. Any kind of controversial bills or bills that are, that are going to cause some dissension in the caucus or whatever, we have to walk in lockstep with leadership, and leadership knows what we're going to do when that bill comes out of committee. Now, the Senate may work differently because I don't work in the Senate, so I want to put that caveat in. But in the House of Representatives, the Speaker knows exactly what I'm going to advance out of Judiciary Committee. He knows exactly what is going to be in the property bills. And I work for people a lot in district trouble. When it comes to being a committee chair, I also work for the Speaker of the House. That's just a fact. That's just the way it is. I do not have, and no committee chair, maybe it's different in the Senate, but no committee chair in the House has absolute autonomy to pass anyhow what they're going to pass. There are discussions with leadership. So personally, in total respect for Senator Schultz, because I could be wrong, but it is Representative Hull's opinion that leadership in the Senate knows exactly what Senator Municipal is going to do with that bill. Okay? Because I know in my chamber, leadership knows exactly what's going to happen with the bill. So that was to my point about when we're thinking about who we want to be our candidate for governor. Let us remember who is obfuscating versus who's really fighting for property rights. Thank you.
I'll wrap up here real quick, but thank you for being there all the time. We see you and your group of people there and politely protesting the way protesting is supposed to be. You don't lay down and pretend that you're dead in the middle of the floor like we see a lot of times. So, and just for your benefit, you'll be happy to know that if we pass this salary raise bill, that Governor Reynolds won't be included in it because she's already decided not to run. The last thing you mentioned water, and it brought up, but we didn't talk about anaerobic digesters and some of the other things that we got going on. But if you don't know that right below this area right here, a mile or 2 miles deep is a strain of water that's untapped, that's millions of years old. And I think we could, if we're going to sell water, we might as well tap in and sell antique water. I think it's got to have some serious value to it, right? Very good. Antique water. I thought of it when you first told us. We're getting near the
It's
end.
not.
Yes.
Okay, no problem. So I just want to make sure, sometimes I'm here for Niche Bottom Valley RUC. Today I'm here personally, so I want to make sure that that's on the record. I am here personally today. I did attend after we received the property tax information from the Shelby County representatives, and I just have some questions and to ask. First of all, I thank you all for your diligent work. I've been at different meetings and you guys do a great job. I really appreciate that, working for Iowa and serving for us. We built our family home here in Shelby County back in 2000, right? And so we built it, our home, our building. Over the years, things have just gone up and up. And I understand that property has raised. I get that. I'm a farm kid from Mills County, so I understand how property taxes have raised because there's nowhere, that place really is crazy down there for property tax. But when the property tax continues to be talked about on a state level, that there is a property tax relief, and it keeps coming through. It even comes through to me reading things from Municipal, you know, like for us, I read that. But my property tax continues to go up in Shelby County. And I went to the meeting, and some of it is because of the state putting more responsibility back on the counties, and I understand that level up versus level down. But where does it stop at this point? Because if you think about employees only getting 2 to 3% increase on wages for cost of living, that isn't even close to a cost of living raise. But my property taxes over the last few years, because of evaluations, have gone up substantially. When we built the home, it was very manageable. Now it's getting to that point where even as a working person, I'm saving right now, today, and we have a nice family home here, roughly $650 a month just for property tax. It is going to go to probably close to $800 with the most recent tax evaluation that just came out. I am a single income now. My husband did pass away, and just like you guys said, I'm not trying to go on, I work till 2:30 in the morning, or I'm a widow. That has nothing to do with that. I am very much so standalone kind of person. But I also see, I'm going to enter my work moment here, I also see life heap. I see people trying to pay rent, taxes, electric bills. You can't keep rent levels here when property taxes are here and insurance went to here. So by the time you do all of that and you raise that, yes, I'm on my way up and out, But these young kids that are not there, I don't even know how you wage justify that to let local folks in rural Iowa. And I understand that, you know, it might look like in Polk County, Story County, Dallas, even Pottawatomie County, that there's so much area and tax money coming in off of county tax, local option, things like that. We don't have that, right, in the rural area, which goes kind of back to my REC roots of we only serve 2.5 to 3 members per mile line, right? So when you're serving that and you've got that infrastructure that could serve that many more people, and you don't have an apartment building, there's a huge difference there. So sometimes when I relate property taxes, I kind of throw my REC hat on a little bit because of the number of the popular, you know, the popularity of that area and that. So what can be done? What are you guys doing? And it is really hard to hear the governor continue to say we're getting property relief and my property taxes are going up substantially.
So, just sort of let's wrap real quick. I feel exactly what you're talking about because we're all property taxpayers too. So it's happening to us just like it's happening to you as well. So we've got a first-hand view of that. I'm not going to kick this can down the road here, but I'm not on Ways and Means, and you're on Ways, right? Yeah, these two gentlemen are, so they're closer to that action. I'm not involved. I'm just responsible in this activity. So.
We're sitting there smiling, wondering, so which way is Greg going to go with it? He's right-handed, so I guess that I'm first before Steve. So, number one, it needs to be noted that property taxes are a year out. So anything that we change, anything you see in the headlines is not immediate effect. It's for the next budgeting process. So when we did 718 3 years ago now, that was a stair-stepping point to try to get a hold of valuations which were spiking then for just economic reasons. And it was to try to make sure that local property tax officials, and then I'm going to start right now. I have almost no supervisors will talk to me anymore. Me and cities seem to get along pretty good. And that doesn't mean no supervisors will, but this is a contentious issue between the people who feel responsible for providing the services, making sure services are met, and office holders who think taxpayers come first. So there's a lot of there gets to be a lot of emotion, arguments, and position taking. So 718 was a stair step to try to make sure that the skyrocketing assessments didn't get taken advantage of by office holders who would only keep levies the same or lower them a little bit and take advantage of the windfall that higher assessments brought them. Incredibly controversial, and it showed me a lot of how a lot of local elected officials really were hoping to take advantage of a year of easier budgeting decisions because more money was going to come in. Fair enough, that's theirs. That's not the way I see it, but some did. The assessment, I'll address, assessments are only one part of the mathematical formula that decide your property taxes. I have completely, state law says that your assessments have to match market value. So I have, in my mind, pretty well set assessors aside as part of the controversy. They set them at market value. Elected officials set the levy to either they lower the levy enough so that your taxes don't go up, they keep them the same, maybe, where your taxes go up, but they claim they didn't raise your taxes, or aggressive locations will actually raise your levy and take advantage of the assessment. All of that falls back to an elected official. I always want to tell people, and it's probably past time for me to do my annual newsletter, every bit of responsibility is on the local elected official. And my wife is a board of trustee member in Denison at Crawford County Memorial. Before they finish a budget, I say, Amy, if you collect more money, regardless of your levy, you raise taxes. You have every ability to lower the levy so that taxes stay at zero. That may not be realistic, I mean, it may be you need more money. There might be a legitimate reason. But do not come home and tell me that we left the levy the same, we didn't raise the taxes, because I'll make you sleep on the couch. And I say that, I'm smiling. But because that's not the truth. If you left the levy the same and you collect more money, you raise taxes. So 718 was to address skyrocketing assessments. Whether it was successful or not can be up for debate. I can tell you I got into a fight with Northwest, actually an actual 15-minute rant back and forth with the regional supervisors meeting at Pizza Ranch in Storm Lake, because I called them out on all of the ways they were collecting more money and claiming they weren't raising taxes. So that's part of why they won't talk to me anymore. This property tax bill is actually meant to be the actual reform written by Bobby Kaufman in the House and Dan Dawson in the Senate. I've been supporting them completely. It moves from an assessment cap to just try to hold the line on assessments as a time, to save time. It moves to a revenue cap saying that your revenue cannot be more than 2% of what it was last year. 2% is actually negotiable. They're not locked in stone, is my understanding. We don't even need to get it done this year, according to Dan, but and I'm not sure where the House is, if they want to get it done or not. I think Speaker Grassley has said we'll stick around until it is. I'm okay with that. I don't want to wait another year, to be quite honest. But a 2% cap, minus a few exceptions, so that they don't get tracked, so the local officials don't get, that would be things like insurance premiums, pension costs, things that are actually decided for them. There's a couple escape routes, and then you also have a number of people saying that we're going to take a higher tax rate. What? 60%. Yeah, currently too. That's negotiable, but they're looking at 2. It also tries to provide transparency by removing the rollback. The rollback right now is just it obfuscates the whole issue by an annual different number that rolls back your assessment as to what they can tax. That it makes no sense to have a rollback. You may as well tax on 100%, but have a 2% levy so that your levy is driven down to what it takes to get 102 max. So we're trying to get transparency for you so you can see why your number is higher or the same or lower. So transparency is part of it. I'll let Steve go on, but the idea is that you can read your tax notice, understand in a much simpler manner, because I get the tax notice too, and I'm like, well, it's a good thing I'm a legislator.
Right, because that letter was very, we have 4 letters we have to send out to, right, and very receive. They don't make sense, you know what I mean? That they are drafted, but that letter is very difficult for people to understand because it's hard to read.
So get rid of the rollback, cap them at 2%, give them a couple things that they can't help. Give the voters a chance to say, yes, we do need to go higher than the 2% cap because, whatever that is. It will also freeze senior citizens' property taxes at a certain level after a certain age if they are 300% or less of the poverty level, so they don't get taxed out of their home. They have to sell the house in order. It raises the exemption for homestead from 25 to 50. That's what we're trying to do. Now, I want to say, this is my olive branch out to those local office holders. They sincerely are afraid that this limitation on their taxing ability is going to not allow them to fund the services that they are told are desperately needed. I don't think any of them, especially in Western Iowa, are trying to, I promise you, they are not wringing their hands and smiling about all the additional money they're going to bring in. I honestly believe they're scared the services will not be there that they agreed to fund. However, in my newsletter 2 years ago, 2 years ago, after my Northwest supervisors meeting, my analysis for my newsletter for the constituents was, I have good news for you and bad news for you. The good news is your local property tax levying officials love you. They want to make sure you have the services you're supposed to have. They want to make sure that they're good services that are worth providing. They want to make sure that county, city, school, all that government is sustainable and improving and providing better services year after year. The bad news is, apparently they're willing to tax you whatever it takes to provide those services and improve on them year after year. So that, I say that not as an insult, but to lay out on the table. You have folks who are taxpayer first, services be damned, or you have taxpayers will have to pay it, services come first. Or somewhere in the middle. I mean, because not everybody's one or the other. I am a taxpayer first. When the citizens' outcry is such that you need to tax us more because we aren't getting enough services, that can be private roads, that can be police, ambulance, hospital, school. When the taxpayers say that you're not taxing us enough, our services suck, the discussion changes. Right now, the taxpayers are saying, I can't keep up. You're taxing me more than I can grow. So I'm with the taxpayers. So that's where I am now. I've already filibustered. We got to go see.
Now, I was just saying, that's where it becomes problematic to freeze people's taxes. Anybody who gets frozen still needs services, and somebody's going to pay for that. So if you're going to be able to vote for a new school or a new fire department or a new ambulance or new whatever, but your taxes are frozen, you don't have a disincentive to not vote in favor of everything that comes along. So I get it. I don't want to push people out of their homes either, but everybody's got skin in the game.
Senator Schultz covered it really well. Incredibly complex issue. I'm with you. When I get my assessment every year in my house, I'm like, Lord have mercy, I wish I could sell it for this amount. It's ridiculous. Maybe I could sell it for that if it was in California, but I realize that's supposedly the value of it. I'm also very frustrated because I think, maybe not here, but I think a lot of local officials hide behind the assessments, claim they're not raising taxes when they know they are. They know that they can lower the levy. They know they're raising taxes, but they're able to say, well, I'm not raising taxes. See, I mean, it's not true. It's disingenuous. So part of the changes we're making this, I think in the legislation we're contemplating will not allow that to happen anymore. It's a very difficult and challenging issue because on the one hand, we're listening to the local officials who have services they have to provide. On the other hand, and they have to have the money. On the other hand, I'm listening to people on fixed income on their doorstep saying, if you don't do something, I'm not going to be able to stay in my home. And that's who I'm going to listen to. Local officials are just going to have to tighten their belts. I think there are a lot of governments, not necessarily around here, but there are a lot of governments in Iowa, counties and cities that are doing things that they don't have to be doing. Government exists, at least this is Republican philosophy, government exists to do that which people and organizations cannot do for themselves, such as highways, such as military defense, such as law enforcement, all of these things. Obviously some mental health stuff now, a lot of things, but the bottom line is some governments or local governments are getting into things they don't need to be getting into. We've got some places like Polk County, how many supervisors in Polk County make more than the governor makes? They give themselves a pay raise every year. That's what taxpayers are paying for. So it's not like out here in Shelby County or Crawford County. They don't care. They just think they can stick their hands in the taxpayers' pockets anytime they want to. So I'm going, and I don't know if it'll be this year or not. I started at the beginning of the year thinking we were going to get it done this year. I'm not sure we will because it's so complex, but I don't think there's any doubt that it will be done. It'll get done in our session next year if we don't get it done this year. I just don't have any doubt in that. I think we're going to pass something. I don't think it's going to be window dressing. I think it's going to be substantial. We've been on the latest bill. They've been running numbers. They will pick somebody's house, what their taxes are. They'll run the numbers through LSA. Bobby Cochran's been doing that, and it has been bringing property taxes down for people. So that's encouraging. There's also some TIF reform we need to do, tax increment financing. Steve Ginkle pointed out to me there's some TIFing that was done in Shelby County that was not covered under the reforms that were done. And that's millions and millions of dollars of property taxes are being shifted to other property taxpayers. That's not acceptable. We need to do some TIF reform. The other thing I will just say on a philosophical basis is I will support, and we'll just have to figure out how we fund things, but I will support your taxes being frozen on your house until the moment you buy it, because it is an unrealized capital gain. being taxed on an assessment that's going up. That is unrealized capital gains that Republicans attacked Kamala Harris for during the election when she was advocating for unrealized capital gains. Your taxes should, everyone's taxes should be frozen at what they are at the moment they buy the house until they make an improvement on the house. If they put a room on the house or they build a mother-in-law house or whatever, then it gets reassessed. But I don't understand why we're taxing things that you haven't realized. I think it's wrong, and I realize that that's never going to, because how we're going to fund things, I get that. I've also supported other states freeze taxes at the moment that someone retires because they don't have fixed income, and they can't continue to afford to have their property taxes go up and up and up. So there's a lot of discussions going on. You did mention, Representative Williams, that we did take rural health care costs away from the counties recently. Was that mental health? Mental health. We took home to the state. Part of the equation of what we're working on right now will take the school funding portion of property taxes home to the state. So, the bottom line is the state either has to pay for things that are currently being paid for by property taxes, or we're going to have to find a way to rein in spending. And there's no other. If we cut property taxes, then the bottom line is it's going to have to be paid for some other way, either by the state or also enforcing some fiscal discipline onto those counties, most particularly that aren't engaging in fiscal discipline. So it's a very complex issue. You can't just lower property taxes and expect services to remain the same if the state doesn't take it on. So Senator Schultz pointed out, I think at the last one, he's concerned because we have always been very disciplined in terms of keeping our spending increases every year to around 2 or 3%. This year it's looking more like 5%. That's not sustainable. So we have to look at all of those things too.
So you just told me something I hadn't heard. You're talking about bringing the school funding portion of the property taxes into the state. So we're spending $4 billion at the state level now. That would add about another $5 billion.
It's compensated for another formula, so it's not
Okay. Interesting. I'll be looking forward to hearing more now.
I have one more olive branch for the local elected officials. This is something that's going on me. We're going to have to talk about this in the future. The legislature's done a really good job for the last 8 years of holding the line on spending, of cutting taxes, and trying to build Iowa to a stronger place. We have advantages there are 2 simple advantages that nobody else in the state has. And the first one that we have that nobody at the county, school, city level have, we can go to caucus, close the doors, and have honest conversations that you cannot say in public without it getting used against you in a personal, political, or business manner. And we do. We talked about the PBM bill already. There were things said in that room, some of them in raised voices, that would never have happened and that provided a level of honesty and discussion that you can't have in public. It's not fair to cities, counties, schools, everybody, that they cannot even meet at a non-city council meeting if a quorum happens to be present. I mean, we have fixed that you have to allow some people who are actually trying to reach a difficult decision. You got to give them a little privacy so they can speak their mind, decide what's right without political pressure. The number 2 thing that we have that no other level of government has is, and this is expensive, I'm not saying this is the answer I want to do now, we have year-round professional staff who do nothing but analyze the budget, look for ways to save money, look for strategies, analyze what other states are doing in their budgets to see if they would work in Iowa. We have professionals advising us. Now, at the county level, that'd be the auditor, who is basically the budget manager. They have other jobs to do. And so none of this is to blame the auditor. It's just they are fully employed, and now they're supposed to put together a budget for supervisors who are not allowed to talk about it behind closed doors. So at some point, I'm sitting here wondering, the city clerks would be the other one for the city. You've got the board secretaries on the school boards, also the superintendent. But at some point, you've got to let people go in there and say their gut feeling, because that's where the breakthroughs come from. PPMs are probably going to get passed, is my prediction, I could be wrong, because we closed the doors and we had an honest conversation, even with a little bit of anger. You can't do that on the floor. You can't all of a sudden pull the bill back off the Senate floor, the House floor, and say, you know what, I haven't thought of that way. I'm glad you got angry and had the outburst, because that's what led to this on PPMs. We actually are going to have to support our local taxing officials with a little bit of confidentiality and the ability, and I hear watch this, I don't mean to be going back on my word, and the ability to hire somebody who's an actual either consultant on the budget or a year-round expert on the budget. And I think the taxpayers would actually benefit because I've seen it happen in the state level. And I'm open to feedback. We don't have to finish the meeting on that. Todd, maybe you.
I have a question on the Harlan library and talk about I want immigrants, how do you say immigrants? And they'll talk about, oh, you have a right to stay silent. You have a right you can't let me in to get a warrant. I want to know what point to somebody about that. What's the best way to bring up attention to somebody? I don't like trying to put that illegal even. But they're trying to advertise the other people, quite deep, nothing like that. I'd like to know what kind of stuff. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say.
That's where I understand the question.
Yeah,
I'm part of hearing as well.
So you're talking about the library, illegal aliens, who do you contact about?
Yeah, because they were advertising in a flyer to tell them that you have a right to remain silent. You have a right to have a warrant, don't have to come in.
Well, it's free speech. I mean, I'm somebody that actually fought against the bill a few days ago that there's a lot of intimidation and stuff going on toward our families and stuff now. People in the legislature, they're trying to dox people and do all this stuff, and we have to go and try to deal with that, which I oppose because, you know, free speech can be nasty and dirty, but free speech absolutely would include, I think, people creating flyers if they want to help people that are not here legally. So it's just, you know, as frustrating as it is, I don't know how we would deal with that as to respect and honor free speech, because we have to fight for the free speech that most importantly that we don't agree with. And so that's where I guess I am on that.
One more.
Go ahead.
I own a drone, hobby drone, have for 8 years. Last year you guys passed a law restricting the use of drones over certain animal confinement operations. This year your Senate bill is trying to expand that law. That, the way I read it, would virtually ban hobby drone flying in the state. And I want to know what the motivation is for that. Because I use my drone just to get some pretty views of Iowa countryside and put in a video that maybe I can post on YouTube.
You do what?
I have a hobby drone.
Yes, but you said your motivation is what? I'm not arguing, I'm just...
I'll just fly it, you know, on a nice day when the wind's not blowing, which is rare. When the clouds are fluffy and the sky is blue and the corn is green, it's nice to fly a drone over and maybe make a video. I've done that. I've posted those on my YouTube.
I don't think that would be a problem.
But the way I read it, you're requiring the drone flyer to get permission from the landowner if they own 40 acres. I mean, that's pretty much all Iowa, 40-acre plots. And
the motivation is, and here's another one, it's just one of the undeniable truths of life in my mind, is that everything the left touches, they destroy. So the animal rights folks have started flying drones over animal confinement operations, and they have started harassing and using drones to sit there and study and to try to find any violation they can find in order to put the person out of business, harass the animal feeding industry. So basically this comes from animal rights actors. I don't believe, and my understanding of the bill is that if you were flying over, because planes fly over, I mean experimental aircraft fly over, if you go over providing a product that has nothing to do with harassment or spying on individuals with motivation, I don't think you're going to have a problem. Now, if you're trying to...
it, Senate Bill 491?
It's
It's not how I read it.
It's not in a committee that I'm on.
I mean, it passed from the Senate and it's gone to the House.
I should ask, do you have a motivation to harass a farmer, or are you anti-confinement, or are you CCI or anything?
No.
Okay, then I doubt
I
that
own
any.
cows, I wouldn't be so stupid as to try to scare cows.
I would agree with you. I don't think you're gonna have any trouble with this. And the regulations, I think, are triggered by the actual intent and your actions. I mean, if you're taking pictures of things that people enjoy and you're not hurting anybody, I don't think you have any trouble. But if somebody here has anything to add, but this would be a case of you have to have a bill because activists, and I'm always on the left, I just don't run into this on the conservative side, but because people are trying to destroy things. This would be the higher tech version of every left-wing protester holding their phone up trying to instigate a confrontation.
That's what the bill that you passed and was signed into law last year covered. But this expands it.
I don't think you're going to have any problem. I think it's
Maybe
intent.
not, but the farmer, like, hey, that drone's flying over and he might be spying. He might not have a cow or a pig on the place. And he can start making trouble for the drone flyer.
I'm not sure I'm going to be able to communicate an answer. I'm going to let these guys, because I don't think you have a problem.
And there's another aspect to this too. If it were challenged in court, once that drone leaves the ground, once it's an inch off the ground, it becomes the province of the FAA, not the state of Iowa.
I would agree with that.
I mean, you can't, even a plane flying out of Harlan Airport that maybe flies over Kenny Scheckinger's cow lot over here, you can't regulate if someone's on that plane taking a picture of his cow lot. That's the FAA. So I'm not even sure it would pass constitutional.
I'm not sure it is either. We're trying to support Iowa agriculture, and we have an attack from the left going on, and I'm going to stand with our animal agriculture.
How many incidents of that nature have been documented where drone flyers have gone over animal confinement areas in Iowa?
I don't have a number, but I do have a senator who was actually almost run out of his house and off his farm because of the left. And I think they involved drones before they started they started by trying to trespass on his land to take pictures, and then we ended up with drones. This is a political answer. Now, I'm not worried about picture takers. I'm worried about left-wing animal extremists, CCI. I'm worried about folks who are trying to hurt and push their own agenda on other people's land.
I mean, I get the Omaha World Herald, Iowa Farmer Today, Wallace's Farmer, Farm Journal, Successful Farming. Never read a story of this nature of a drone harassing an animal operation.
Okay.
Is this a piece of legislation in search of a problem?
I think I already explained the motivation from the Senate in the discussion we had.
I'll give you my card if you want to email me your questions, and I'll deal with our staff and see if in fact the issues you're concerned about are accurate or correct. I will say this, we have had discussions on what the FAA is responsible for, and the legal staff has advised us that we can regulate up to a certain altitude, and we don't believe there's going to be any constitutional issue. I mean, you may disagree, I'm just telling you what our staff has told us. There is an altitude at which the FAA, we can't do anything about, and that's what we're regulating, is that altitude that we believe we can regulate that is not covered by the FAA, and they have a certain altitude that they cover. So that's...
What's that height? What is that altitude?
I can't tell you that, I don't remember, okay? I'm just telling you what the discussion was with the legal folks. So if you'll send me your questions, I'll be glad to try to, get an answer for you, okay? But again, it's also a privacy issue. I actually think I have a right as a homeowner to not let you out of fly drone over my house and take pictures of what I'm doing in the backyard. So there are some privacy issues for citizens too. Not just you're allowed to fly drone around and take pictures, okay?
But
you're
you're assuming that, you're going on the assumption that we're doing something nefarious.
No, I'm going on the assumption that I have a private property right, that nobody gets to fly over my property and take pictures of my dog in the backyard sunbathing, okay? That's how I feel about it, so.
I can just that too, that it's a safety issue, because my neighbor will fly them over when I'm riding horses, and it freaks out the horses sometimes.
What is your motivation? I'm a little curious, you're a bit defensive. What is your motivation? Why do you want to fly over his house so bad?
I don't.
You're mad that somebody might pass a law that's, I'm really curious. I
The law says, right now, that there's, the expansion of this law says contiguous 40 acres. So that like would be a 40-acre cornfield. You're saying I can't fly over that without the risk of getting a misdemeanor charge against me.
Sounds to me like if you go over a certain elevation and don't just hover over a swimming pool, you can.
Well, that's not the way I read this legislation.
Yeah, I was just rereading here, so I'm sitting here looking at the actual bill here again. And so there is a section here that talks about the preponderance of evidence indicates that the respondent is harassing the petitioner by controlling the flight of a remotely piloted aircraft over their homestead or farmstead in violation of this section. So when I read this, I didn't see this as being situations like you're talking about. Because we all have guys that fly over top and take a picture of the farm and try to sell you the photograph of your farm, which is kind of cool, right? My understanding is that this was related to the use of that, the intent of harassment, taking photos of something that they're doing and with the purposes of the gotcha moment. That's the way that I read it. So I'm trying to reread it with what you're talking about in mind, and I'll reread it again. But
The way I see it, if the owner of that 40 acres of corn sees the drone and he knows where it's coming from, he can call probably the sheriff or somebody and start making trouble.
I think you could probably do that anyway.
Not now, I can't.
Why do you want to fly over people's places so bad? I'm really curious. Sir, in all due respect, you're agitated at a level that indicates to me you want to get something
Have you
done.
ever seen Aerial America on the Smithsonian Channel?
No, I haven't, but I'm picturing...
That's what they do on that show. They fly over picturesque, scenic countryside
Yes,
because it looks nice.
yes.
Maybe you set it to a piece of music and it enhances it even further.
And he just read that intent is a portion of the bill. If you're not intending to harass or use this in a malicious manner, sounds to me like you're okay and you're angry about it.
And sometimes, let me tell you, so one of the things that I've come to realize is you have to read a bill from the beginning to the end. I'm not saying you haven't done that, but you have to take into account, like you just read the section that talks about intent. So you have to put that section with everything else that the bill says. And the bottom line is, in a lot of things that we pass, if you read just one section here, you have to put it with the intent. And I think that makes all the difference here.
So we're getting the shepherd, so I don't want to stop your conversation here, but we're way over time here, so we're going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I don't see, I think we're at 30-30s and we're just serving back and forth and nobody's scored any points here. So at this point, we'll just get things done and cut off. And thank you for offering to send some information to him and get Steve your questions. I want to thank everybody for coming out. It's been a really good legislative coffee series this year. And look forward to next year and make sure that you reach out to these three with any questions or any information that you may need as we move along. All right, thank you very much.